Imagine waking up this morning, driving to your local pharmacy to pick up, a basic generic prescription, and the price has inexplicably doubled.
Oh, wow.
Right. Your first instinct is probably to blame inflation or maybe corporate greed. But the real reason is actually a slow-moving tropical storm in Louisiana combined with a delayed artificial intelligence model in Silicon Valley and a disrupted shipping lane in the Red Sea.
Which sound completely unrelated.
Exactly. But they are all colliding on the exact same day. Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we are looking at the July 22nd, 2026 edition of the Daily Tech Reader's 6 a.m. news brief. And if there's one overarching takeaway for you today, it is this. The buffer is officially gone.
It is entirely gone. I mean, we are living through a phenomenon right now that is best described as simultaneous constraint.
The simultaneous constraint.
Yeah. Usually, global systems have slack, right? Like, if one supply chain breaks, another compensates. If one region faces extreme weather, another region ramps up production.
And that makes sense.
But what we are seeing today is this intense, unyielding pressure across our physical infrastructure, our digital networks, and even our cultural bandwidth. And it is all happening at the exact same moment.
So we aren't just going to give you a laundry list of today's headlines. We really need to unpack the mechanics of this simultaneous constraint.
Right, to see the bigger picture.
Exactly. We need to understand how these seemingly disconnected events are actively weaving together into this giant web that is directly hitting your wallet, your daily commute, and your life.
And the best place to start seeing how this works is by looking at the literal physical squeeze on the globe.
Starting with the geopolitics of energy.
I agree.
Right? Because right now, the United States has just completed its 11th consecutive night of military strikes against Iran.
The scale of this conflict, which has been escalating steadily since February, is just immense. To look at the numbers impartially, the Pentagon estimates that operations have cost approximately $37.5 billion so far.
That is a staggering number.
It really is. And they have just requested an additional $87.6 billion from Congress. That's just to maintain their current tempo, replenish munitions, and support the forces deployed in the region.
But the human cost is, of course, the most sobering reality of all this. 18 American service members have been killed, with over 500 wounded.
Yeah, the human toll is devastating.
And as this entrenched conflict continues, we are seeing serious questions about what the actual diplomatic off-ramp looks like. I mean, Secretary of State Marco Rubio has publicly stated that while channels remain open, he harbors deep doubts about Tehran's willingness to engage in substantive diplomacy.
And at the same time, Iran's president is openly describing the country as being in a state of full-scale war.
Right. And obviously, we are just conveying the facts reported in the brief here, taking no sides. But a conflict of this magnitude, positioned exactly where it is, immediately alters the foundational layer of the global economy.
Which is energy, and the routes used to move it. We are seeing Brent crude oil approaching $94 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate is above $87.
And U.S. gasoline is stubbornly sitting over $4 a gallon.
Exactly. But the higher price of the oil itself is really only half the equation. The real squeeze is how that oil gets to where it needs to go.
Right, the shipping crisis. Because traffic through the Strait of Hormuz is severely depressed due to commercial vessel attacks.
Yeah, you have Houthi threats near the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which is effectively forcing Saudi tankers, ships that are normally bound for China and India, to completely abandon their paths.
They have to detour all the way through the Suez Canal.
Exactly. And it's not isolated to the Middle East. Over in the Black Sea, the Caspian Pipeline Consortium just had to halt Kazakh oil loading due to attacks at their terminal.
And what's fascinating here is how this creates a compounding effect, right?
It's a microtrend known as route inflation. In a normal, healthy global market, a supply chain optimizes for the absolute shortest, cheapest, and safest path.
Makes sense.
But when established corridors become unsafe in the Gulf, the Red Sea, and the Black Sea simultaneously, the market loses its ability to adapt.
I want to visualize this for a second. It sounds like a massive highway pileup, but where the GPS detours are also under construction.
That is a perfect way to look at it.
But how does a halted pipeline in the Black Sea actually function as a hidden consumer tax on, someone buying groceries this morning?
Because every alternative route is inherently longer. And a longer voyage mathematically requires more fuel.
Right.
But the mechanism of route inflation goes much deeper than just the fuel tank. Because the ships are spending more time at sea, taking the long way around, they are tied up longer.
Which means there are fewer ships available.
Instantly creating a global shortage of available tankers. That drives up the daily charter rates. Then, because they are navigating new conflict zones, or taking less predictable routes, maritime insurance premiums skyrocket.
So it's a multiplier effect on the baseline cost of moving literally anything.
Exactly. And that added cost bakes itself into the absolute bottom layer of the economy. It increases the cost of the diesel used by the truck bringing groceries to your local store.
The cost of the electricity to keep that store's refrigeration units running.
And the cost of the gas in your car to go buy them. Root inflation functions as a hidden, universal consumer tax.
Which brings us to a really uncomfortable collision. Because that hidden tax on electricity and transport is peaking right as the weather is deciding to aggressively test those exact same vulnerable systems.
Yeah, the physical environment is actively exploiting the lack of slack in the grid.
Let's look at the map today. Tropical storm Bertha is approaching Louisiana, sitting about 100 miles south of Mobile.
Right.
It's already forced major Gulf oil producers to evacuate workers. Chevron just shut down its Petronas platform.
Which instantly compounds that energy constraint we were just talking about.
Exactly. Meanwhile, Houston is dealing with a staggering 115-degree heat index, and there are 190 active wildfires in Ontario blanketing the U.S. with smoke.
And then you add the political constraints into the mix.
Oh, right, the policy shifts. President Trump just imposed 50% tariffs on $20 billion of Canadian goods.
While House Republicans are pushing urgent spending and immigration bills before they go on recess.
So the policy landscape is shifting just as rapidly as the climate.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets really interesting, and I want to challenge the weather panic a bit.
Okay, go ahead.
Bertha is only clocking 50-mile-per-hour winds. It is not even a major hurricane. Why is this specific, relatively weak storm being treated as a massive public health test?
Because it triggers a phenomenon known as supply chain medicine. We are heavily conditioned by the media to look at the wind speed of a storm as the only metric of danger.
Right. A high category number means catastrophic wind damage.
Exactly. But the actual mechanical threat of a storm like Bertha is how agonizingly slow it is moving.
So it's not the initial punch, it's the weight of the water over time.
Precisely. A slow-moving tropical system just parks itself over a region and repeatedly dumps rain onto the exact same communities. It floods roads, which halts local transport. And crucially, within 24 to 48 hours, those wet, flooded buildings begin to grow mold. To safely recover from that, you need electrical isolation, protective equipment, and industrial-scale controlled drying.
But you cannot run industrial drying equipment if the power grid is failing.
And that grid is simultaneously being pushed to its absolute breaking point. Houston's 115-degree heat index means the electrical infrastructure never gets a chance to cool down overnight.
The transformers are just running hot 204/7.
Right. When the grid fails under that heat, people who rely on dependable cooling for their health or require refrigeration for medications like insulin become incredibly vulnerable.
And this is where the international trade policies suddenly become a life-or-death variable. Because right now, Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly are locked in court battles over weight loss drugs.
Yes.
And we have potential U.S. tariffs on Indian generic drugs set to begin on August 1st.
This is the core mechanism of supply chain medicine. Modern hospitals and pharmacies operate on just-in-time inventory.
Right. They don't have massive warehouses full of generic drugs sitting around.
They rely on a constant, uninterrupted flow from international manufacturing networks, heavily based in places like India. If you apply tariffs to those generic medicines, the cost spikes and the flow is disrupted.
And you can't just stockpile refrigerated perishable medicines in advance anyway.
Right. So you have a slow-moving storm creating a sudden spike in medical emergencies and displaced populations. At that exact moment, the power grid fails due to extreme heat, knocking out local refrigeration.
Wow.
And simultaneously, international tariffs restrict the flow of the replacement drugs needed to treat those people. Consumer goods, like a shipment of sneakers, can sit in a container for a month while a shipping route is figured out.
But life-saving generic drugs cannot.
Exactly. The storm, the electrical grid, the trucks, and the international trade policies are all actively conspiring to decide whether a treatment actually reaches a patient.
It is a terrifying level of fragility.
Okay.
So the physical world is clearly being squeezed to its absolute limit by storms, power grids, and shipping lane closures. But you would assume the digital world, the tech sector, is immune to this. Software doesn't care if a shipping lane is closed. But when you look at the AI boom right now, they are slamming into the exact same physical constraints.
It is the ultimate collision between infinite software ambitions and finite physical reality. Today, Alphabet and Tesla are releasing earnings.
Right.
And these reports are essentially serving as a massive stress test for the entire artificial intelligence industry.
Let's unpack the numbers because they are staggering, but we really need to understand what they actually mean. Alphabet is planning capital spending of between $180 billion and $190 billion for 2026.
Which is huge.
They are also planning about $85 billion in equity financing. And they're spending this while dealing with the delay of their Gemini 3.5 Pro model.
Plus, the departure of major talent like Gemini co-lead Noam Shazir and Nobel laureate John Jumper. Though Google Cloud revenue is projecting a 64% jump, which is kind of the silver lining, keeping investors pacified.
But then you look at Tesla. They are facing their first quarterly cash burn in over 2 years.
Running through about $3.3 billion in free cash flow.
Yeah. And their capital spending could hit $25 billion as they pivot incredibly hard into physical AI, like robotaxis and humanoid robots.
The robotics startup literally called Humanoid just raised $152 million at a $1.35 billion valuation, showing a huge pivot to physical AI.
And we've got US and China AI talks set for September, plus Microsoft backing Europe's Mistral. But hold on, we have to pause here.
Yeah.
Are companies like Alphabet and Tesla just building a $190 billion digital bridge to nowhere? Are these durable products or just permanent cash consumption?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's about the infrastructure required to force artificial intelligence out of the cloud and into the physical world. Think about traditional software development.
Right.
The marginal cost to produce a second copy of an app is basically zero. But training and deploying physical AI requires massive data centers, thousands of specialized GPUs.
Cooling towers that consume millions of gallons of water.
And gigawatts of electricity. Remember the power grid constraint we just discussed with the storms? The tech industry is fiercely competing for that exact same electricity.
Wow, so they are hitting a physical ceiling.
Literally. In fact, on the software side, a company called Moonshot just had to pause subscriptions for their Kimi K3 model simply because they exhausted their available GPUs. They literally ran out of physical computing power.
But it's more than just electricity and hardware, right? There's
Yeah.
a safety aspect to this physical pivot that feels entirely new.
There is, and it's driving a major shift in the tech labor market called accountable complexity.
Accountable complexity.
Right. For the last decade, Silicon Valley's ethos was move fast and break things. If you build a chatbot and it hallucinates an incorrect historical fact, it's annoying, but it's contained to a screen.
But when you build physical AI, like Tesla's cybercabs or humanoids robots, the AI is now operating a 3,000-pound machine in a physical environment.
Exactly. A hallucination in a robotaxi at 60 miles per hour is a catastrophic event. Moving fast and breaking things does not work when the thing breaking is a car.
So physical systems introduce the need for real mechanical reliability.
And maintenance and profound human safety guarantees. Organizations are pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into these systems, but they are suddenly realizing they have a massive vulnerability.
What's that?
They don't have enough people who can actually explain, control, and recover these models when they behave unpredictably.
I noticed the term CRU popping up in relation to this. How does that fit in?
So CRU is an old database acronym. It stands for Create, Read, Update, Delete.
Okay.
It represents the foundational, human-readable ways we track changes in a system. The industry is currently obsessing over a concept called containment by design.
Because these AI models are becoming opaque black boxes.
Right, so companies are realizing they need firm mechanical boundaries around them. They need isolated environments, narrow permissions, human-readable logs to audit decisions.
And above all, immediate, foolproof shutdown controls.
Exactly. The capital test right now isn't just about who can build the most complex AI. It's about finding professionals who can map those complex systems and install the digital equivalent of an emergency brake.
That is a massive paradigm shift. You can't just be a genius coder anymore. You have to be a systems auditor. You have to build the brake, not just the engine.
Precisely. And this leads to an incredibly interesting psychological consequence. When you look at the sheer, unrelenting scale of everything we've talked about, the multi-billion-dollar capital burns, the 11-day military strikes, the continent-spanning weather events...
It's fundamentally exhausting.
It really is. And that exhaustion is bleeding directly into our culture and how we consume entertainment.
Yes, the culture shift is fascinating. Let's look at the sports world. We just saw the conclusion of the expanded World Cup.
Right, 48 teams.
104 matches, spread across 16 cities, lasting 39 days. And the fallout is intense.
The players are just completely exhausted.
leading to a unified push by players and leagues to actively challenge FIFA and force enforceable limits on international match scheduling.
And we are seeing a similar push in cricket, where tournaments like the 100 are aggressively trying to shorten their formats just to make them digestible for television.
So what does this all mean for us as consumers? Have we just lost our appetite for spectacle entirely?
Not exactly. It is a cultural microtrend we call scale fatigue. Audiences aren't suddenly anti-event or anti-entertainment.
Okay, so what is it?
They are just increasingly noticing when the commercial packaging, the length, and the corporate demands become heavier than the actual human experience of the sport or film?
Oh, I see. It stops feeling like a human event and starts feeling like an industrial process.
Exactly. The viewer intrinsically feels the exhaustion of the players. Contrast that with what is happening in the film industry right now.
Right. Christopher Nolan's new film, The Odyssey, just pulled in $264 million in global ticket sales. So audiences clearly still crave genuine visual events.
But why does it work? Because the Odyssey is a contained experience. It has a definitive beginning, middle, and end.
It has firm boundaries.
Yes. For years, entertainment companies have relied on an endless, continuous stream of modest successes and algorithmic content. But scale fatigue indicates a breaking point.
Just like the tech industry needing emergency brakes on AI, audiences are demanding boundaries on their entertainment.
They are pushing back against systems that demand infinite, continuous participation without any respect for human limits.
It's all incredibly connected. If we step back and synthesize everything we've explored today, the stranded oil tankers inflating your grocery bill,
Right.
the slow-moving storm threatening a fragile generic drug supply, the tech giants burning billions to build physical infrastructure for AI, and the exhausted athletes pushing back against endless tournaments.
The defining reality of 2026 is undeniable.
Whether it's an oil tanker, a delayed AI model, or an exhausted soccer player, systems are reaching their absolute limits of scale and efficiency. There is no slack left in the rope.
It's the new baseline. And understanding these mechanics leaves us with a really profound final thought to mull over.
What's that?
We have mapped out how our physical infrastructure, our climate, and our cultural attention spans are deeply suffering from scale fatigue and simultaneous constraint.
Right, the physical world is exhausted.
So, what happens when autonomous AI agents, which are fundamentally designed to operate at unlimited scale, lightning speed, and relentless efficiency, fully collide with this heavily constrained, easily broken physical reality?
Will the future belong to those who build the fastest models?
Or will the true advantage belong to those who master the art of graceful shutdowns and build resilient, localized systems that can actually survive severe physical constraints?
That is the ultimate bottleneck and a phenomenal question to leave you with. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the invisible connections behind your daily news feed.
Keep an eye out for those compounding costs.
Exactly. At the pharmacy and the grocery store.
Mhm.
And we will catch you next time as we continue to unpack the mechanics shaping your world.